A week or so ago, the nuclear START treaty between the Russia and the United States lapsed. There is no treaty anymore. And it looks like there's going to be a drive for more nuclear weapons. Could this lead to nuclear war? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Thank you again. Please like, comment, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. And you'll find all the links for the guests in the description below. All right, Tuesday, 10th of February, I'm joined by retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt and not retired Larouchian General Harley Schlanger. I'll have all the Hey Harley, I'll have all the links in the description below where people can find you. Harley, you mentioned something just before we started recording about a report from the US government.
No, the Heritage Foundation.
The Heritage Foundation. Sorry, do you want to say what that is and also give a little bit of a background?
Well, the expiration of the New START agreement was seen as a test as to whether the idea of a new relationship between Russia and the United States could take hold. And I still think that President Trump is hopeful with his discussions with Putin that they can do something more. But this is a turning point, a change, because now there's no agreement between Russia and the United States on the amount of nuclear weapons, the testing, and things of that sort. And so this report was actually from October 2025 from the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank that put out some of the discussion of what the second Trump term would be. This is a proposal by someone named Robert Peters titled The U.S. Nuclear Arsenal of 2050, a proposal for American survival. And it calls for a tripling of the amount of nuclear weapons the U.S. has, 3,500 strategic weapons, 1,125 non-strategic, in an arsenal in 3 theaters. That includes the Indo-Pacific, Europe, and the United States. Total for 4,625 operationally deployed nuclear weapons. And the idea is that this will somehow protect us when the problem has not been, I mean, look, nuclear weapons have played a role in deterrence. There's no question about that. But they were deterrent provided there was discussion going on, dialogue, diplomacy. And it's clear to me that there's a grouping around Trump who are trying to break away from this idea of a normalization of relations with Russia. And I think that's standing in the way of solving the Ukraine situation. And that's what the story is.
Could you just explain the Heritage Foundation? Who and what are they?
It's an older conservative think tank, does a lot of work on economics, sort of a libertarian Austrian school approach. And it's very prominent as a Republican think tank. Trump at times has called it the rhinos or the Bush networks. At other times he's supported them. But it's part of what you might call the conservative think tank collection in the United States.
Is it a proxy or a descendant of the City of London in some way? Always have to ask
Well,
that.
most think tanks are. Most of the Western think tanks, including the liberal think tanks, including the so-called conservative. You know, you've got groups like the Henry Jackson Society in London. That's a direct one because that came from a Democratic senator who produced Wolfowitz and Richard Pearl.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So there's an integration of these things and a coordination. So that's what we have, the think tank complex.
Okay. So, General, this must be
So
good
I want
news
to take
for
you back. Yeah, not good news. Unfortunately, I've never really lived up to the billing that you've had for me as your warmongering general. Sorry. I think I'm gonna fail you here again.
Oh, Blaine. What a disappointment you are.
I know. Sets low goals and fails to obtain them, I think is what it said on my last performance report. But what I would say is I want to take you back to post-World War II, a guy named Truman, who is now finding himself the president, a little bit overwhelmed, especially with the national security establishment, which was certainly established and only getting worse. There's a white knight in this story, and his name is George Kennan, our ambassador to Russia. And he wrote as Mr. X in the Foreign Affairs magazine, of which I am still a member with the CFR. He wrote this thing called the Long Telegram. And everybody thought this was marvelous. The entire establishment in Washington, D.C. regaled at this containment strategy for Russia and that we have to contain them. This is the existential fight of our lifetimes. Well, I am friends, or I was friends before she passed, with his daughter, Grace Warnicki Kennan. And so I bring you this firsthand knowledge that they bastardized the entire Long Telegram and hijacked it for their own purposes. It's not what George meant. What George meant was containment means we're going to engage them in a demilitarized way. We're going to get into Russian society and culture much the way we did in the 1800s. And we're going to have to work with the Russians. That is not what stopped Paul Nietzsche from helping to fashion this new document called NSC, National Security Council document number 68. And what that was taking the Long Telegram and turning it into a neocon dream. And the dream was, we are now going to really hit the jets on this thing called the military industrial complex and let no checkbook be spared. We're going to build bombers like they're going out of style. We're going to be flush with nuclear weapons all over the place. We're going to have the media machine talk about the Red Scourge wherever we can. And we're going to get our kids to literally get under school desks to think that that will save them from nuclear weapons. Okay, now let's come to today. You have a president. He's a bull who brings his own china shop. A lot more worldly, I would say. But I do think that he still has some blind spots with his naivete to the thing called the swamp in Washington, D.C., and all of the designs and all of the agendas around him. And so when the president delays the START treaty in his mind, and I can't know for sure because I'm not going to speak for him, but I think in his mind, he's thinking that him and Vladimir Putin are about to chart a brand new path in American-Russian relations. But that's leaving a window of opportunity for these neocons while everybody misreads the signals as we've delayed START. It's the end of days. Okay, well, hold on, kids. There is a place for nuclear weapons modernization for us right now. We are behind in hypersonics. We're behind in a whole variety of classes of weapon systems that we need to be in parity so that we have at least a good deterrent doctrine. That I certainly agree to. But then you see what's happening, much like it happened in the 50s. You got a kid. You know, anybody who's below age 40 is a kid in my book. You got a kid. He's sitting at a think tank. He's a neocon. He's been to the parties. He's got big dreams. And he's going to write down a document. Why does he write the paper to say we need to spend all this money on more nuclear weapons? Well, he does it because this is what will get him notoriety. And he's got a big dream that his think piece is going to find its way in to a new thing we call the National Defense Authorization Act. And eventually the defense industrial base will get behind him. They'll all celebrate him. This is the way forward to secure America. This thing will take a life of its own. And just about the time President Trump is leaving office, they have dreams that this neocon wonderment of, yes, we're going after Golden Dome and we're going to have the greatest nuclear weapons on the planet. Let me be honest. We've got enough nuclear weapons to kill every man, woman, and child on the planet right now. There's no question about that. Several times over. And the Russians do too. And so do the Chinese. And that's why I think the president was brilliant in the current national security strategy, which is a three-railed deal, which is we don't like each other, but by gosh, we're going to have three cops in the world. It's going to be Russia, China, and America. We're going to rub elbows, that's for sure. But we're also not going to let the planet annihilate itself. And we're all going to understand we have this common enemy called the City of London. So while we don't like each other, we damn sure don't like them. Yeah. And you see us making statements about devolving the American dollar. Rubio just came up and said, hey, yeah, no, listen, we're not going to be the world's reserve currency much longer. We're going to live in a world where we don't have sanctions as a weapon. This is agitating the neocons. They're going to be more aggressive about that. And so I'm just giving you the contours of where that debate sits in D.C. So my advice to the president on this stuff would be, you got to watch all of your flanks in DC. And if you're not getting the right advice about who's running what game, then you need to take interest in that right now, because these are the seeds that will outlive you and your presidency, and they will come back to us. And this is how these vines, these poison ivy vines, replenish themselves. And so, modernization, yes. This thing, no. And should we freak out because start's delayed? I think we should wait, because I think there's more to drop here in the coming days. But even in the 50s to now, the treachery is all in place. It's we the people versus they the swamp, and they the swamp are agents of the City of London. There I go.
Yeah. I mean, no, Harley, before you go on, one of the things I've heard several times about Trump is that he's anti-nuclear war. His uncle uh, engendered this dislike or aversion to nuclear weapons in Donald Trump. I mean, Trump, I think, is anti-war, and in particular anti-nuclear war. So I am kind of inclined to think, and possibly hopeful as well, like that he is going to negotiate something new, much better, and that's why he's let it lapse. And it's like you said, Blaine, the neocons that are coming in and say, hey, a window of opportunity where we can go Dr. Strangelove a million times over.
Well said.
You may have heard from me that this question of Trump's relationship with his uncle.
Right.
Because some of the people I know from Trump had told me that in quiet evenings, sometimes he'll bring that up, why he has such a problem with the neocons. His uncle was in the Manhattan Project, the original nuclear weapons development program, and instilled in him a concern that you cannot allow these weapons to be used. And I think he genuinely believes that. The problem is, as we see, that what he genuinely believes is sometimes thwarted by the security state around him and by the people, the Rubios, the Ted Cruzes, the John Boltons in his last administration. I mean, what he was doing, for example, with Kim Jong-un was revolutionary. He didn't just say we're going to we're going to destroy North Korea. He said, let me talk to the little man, the rocket man. And they actually made
how many heart attacks that caused strokes in DC.
And they made some progress. And then what happened? John Bolton went in there and said, don't forget what happened to Gaddafi when he shut down his program, basically inciting Kim Jong-un to break with the agreements he made with Trump. So the problem is, the problem with Trump is that I don't think he's followed through as he has to in cleaning up the swamp. And there are two areas where he could do that. One would be to release everything on the Russiagate. We still haven't seen the whole story of Russiagate, which was a British-American coordinated offensive against the office of the presidency. And in that sense, you have the GCHQ in London, you have MI6, Richard Dearloff, Christopher Steele, the Chatham House, working together with the Obama security team and the Bush networks to stop Trump. As the House of Lords in a report in December 2018 said, that if Trump gets reelected, the special relationship is gone. Right. So Russiagate is one area. Now the Epstein case gives us another opportunity, because Epstein had to put it mildly, his fingers into everything. And he was deployed for a specific purpose, which was to build up a military industrial complex which unites the United Kingdom, the United States, and Israel. That was his deployment. And that's why he was protected. And there are people in the administration who were part of this, not so prominent maybe, but I think this is why there was a hesitancy to release all the documents. So here are two areas where the president could do something of enormous benefit to clear up all the mysteries about the post-Cold War era. Now, General, I'm really happy you mentioned this thing about George Kennan, because he was actually quite important in identifying the counter tendency from people like Brzezinski and Kissinger to want to go after Russia. and have an enemy image with Russia, because Kennan recognized that Russia, certainly Soviet Russia, was a potential problem, but that the history of Russia was one that opened it to collaboration with Europe.
Right.
And Kennan was one of the people who blew the whistle on the efforts to use Ukraine as a hammer
He
against
did.
Russia.
He did.
And he was very farsighted in that. And who shut that up? The U.S. Embassy in Moscow tried to silence him. And now I'm talking about after the Maidan coup. I think he'd lived until 2015 or something like that. But there was an effort to completely silence him because he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no question of that.
Going back to the Russiagate coup, there is work that Tulsi Gabbard is doing in collecting evidence, releasing evidence, and I think compiling a case. I do think that arrests are going to come, but one of the problems that Trump has is dealing with a corrupt, captured judiciary. Because there's no point charging people and bringing them up for trial when they could end up in front of a Democrat or a WEF captured judge who's just going to let them off, as what happened with Comey.
Well, this is where you have to go to the public. And Trump has shown at times when he can speak to the public and move them to understand what he's saying about why we have to work with Russia. In his 2016 campaign, he was very eloquent on why can't we be friends with Russia? What's the problem here? And there was a shift in the population on that to support Trump. So I think he has to use what they call the bully pulpit. Go out there and take the documents. Show how Brennan, through his alliance with Gina Haspel,
Gina Haspel, yeah. CIA director.
She was working with the U.S. CIA deployed agent in London to coordinate this. It's a slam dunk case. I mean, I've written about this extensively. And if the president took this out to the American people and said, you hear all these slanders against me, slanders against the America First, here's where they're coming from, here's what they're doing, and we're being prevented from pursuing this by the neocons, the military-industrial complex, and the judiciary. And I think you could have with what we're seeing turning up against the Epstein case, I think you could have an even bigger reaction if he were to do that.
Right. Well, what we need is for Trump to hear that message, to go out there and speak to the American people. And Donald Trump, President, sir, if you're listening, you're welcome to come on my channel. You can send me a DM via X and I'll make some time for you in my schedule. And if you think Trump should come on my channel, let me know in the comments below. Blaine.
I would love to make that happen for you. The thing is this. We're talking about some glaring dangers in our national security posture, not for the United States or the UK, but globally. And we have a group of people that think that nuclear wars are winnable, that think that military-industrial complexes are the primary drivers of economies, and you'd be foolish to think otherwise. And that whether you're on the left or the right, we can all agree that colonization by another name called color revolution is just fine and dandy. But that's not going to happen. It's not sustainable. But those are just symptoms. And for the United States government, the root ball is there is no aisle. There is no Democrat or Republican Party. There is a thing called the swamp. And it's not just the elected officials. It's the cubicle dwellers and the technocrats and the bureaucrats. And it's the lobbyists. And it's all of the think tanks. And it's how the machine works. And there's no accident that the headquarters to all of the defense industrial companies are right there across the water from all of these things. Because it's all interplay. They're all intermarried. And this is why you see members of the president's own party going against him routinely, not passing 62 of his judicial or his attorney appointments, not codifying one of his executive actions into law, because it's really the swamp versus we the people, and Trump is our proxy in this. And we have to even separate members of his own administration from that because they're part of the swamp too. And right now they're closing ranks because their strategy is very easy to see. We're going to play the shot clock. We're going to get to the midterms. The GOP will hand over power to the Democrats, and we'll get them impeached by March next year, and we'll get back to business as usual. In another episode that we've all been on together, we talked about a guy named Larry Ellison. Well, who is he best buddies with? Vice President Vance. It goes on and on.
As is Peter Thiel.
Is Peter Thiel, who feels like he built Vance, which he probably did. And so I guess the big thing here is the president needs to spend a lot of time at the Resolute desk talking to us about this. I completely agree with that. But we've got roughly 120 days to have some sweeping shift in accountability posture and to include members of his own administration. And if we don't, we're going to be on that path. And if we get on that path, well, if you don't like civil war or revolutionary war or global war, just stick around because you're going to get all three.
Find another planet.
Right. Find another planet.
If I could just add one thing on that. I think we're seeing on this question of Iran, the pushback from some sections of the military, because you have the Iran hawks who want to go in and blow up Iran. And these are the Anglo-Zionist networks who are basically dependent on Netanyahu and the money from the Zionist lobby in the United States. But the military is saying that this is not Venezuela. This is not a slam dunk. This might make Iraq look like a cakewalk if we tried to go into Iran. And the president has been clear that he doesn't want to have boots on the ground, especially in a period leading up to an election. And so I think that's why there was this abrupt shift from threats to actually sitting down and talking. Now, we're still far away from an agreement because there are two completely different conceptions. The Iranians are saying they have a right to have a civilian nuclear program, which I think they do. But the United States is saying that they can't trust them to not make it a military program. Netanyahu is in the middle of this. He made another rushed trip over to the United States today to bend Trump's ear on this. And I think we've got to deal with this Israel question, because that's where the combination of the Israeli networks, the Silicon Valley integration with Israel and so on. And again, you know where that takes us? To Epstein. Epstein and Ehud Barak. You know who introduced Epstein to Ehud Barak? Shimon Peres, who is in charge of the Israeli nuclear program.
Yep.
So this goes back to the 50s.
Do you know how they have those spy thriller movies, but at the end, they then stop it and they give you a different ending, and then they give you a different ending? Let me take what Harley just said. Let me posit an absolute different ending for you. And it's not going to be fair because I actually have some pretty good sourcing on this, but the Ayatollah and the regime have been basically talking with the Trump administration now for the better part of 7 to 10 days. And behind the scenes, they've been trying to work something out before they were going to meet physically in Oman. The thing about the nuclear weapons, the thing about nuclear power, it's all a red herring. Because here's what's hanging in the backdrop. It's just like the president put the tourniquet on the situation when he did the B-2 bombings. It was to actually, yes, but it was more of a counter that Bibi was not going to get his big war. And so this is going to be a tourniquet again, but this time the tourniquet is part of the regime actually leaving town. Now, the regime was like, we're not leaving town. But my understanding is that they were all shown from the United States side, their bank accounts, where their gold and silver was, where their pleasure yachts were, where all their kids go to school. In other words, you can think that you have complete control of your regime and where you're at and that you have leverage. But we, quite frankly, can make you all penniless tomorrow and set you on without even firing a shot. Now, That's not how it needs to look on the world stage going off, because we still have a very ardent Israel that is, there is a clear and present danger and we want to go raise that country. That's the debate. The place where I think this is going to end up going, and now we can see some visuals today. We saw 747 Iranian aircraft that were flying between Moscow and Tehran. We saw the same class of airplanes flying between Beijing and Tehran. This is not to bring weapons to Iran. You can't bring enough weapons to Iran to counter the United States military. You just can't. Sorry. But what this is, what I call this as an airlift pilot myself, is Operation Household Goods. I think they're starting to make provisions for this regime to evacuate. Now, here's where it gets dangerous. And right now, as we're speaking, there are bombings going on all around Tehran right now. They're just happening from the ground. And whether that's, intel agencies with their thumb on the scale or an organic thing from the Iranians themselves, we'll find that out. But as this happens, you have a new dangerous class, and that is the IRGC, who watches their regime go away, and they don't have any top cover protection or money anymore. You have the same thing with the secret police. And so I believe what's happening is they're trying to get as many as possible to flip into the people to be on their side, but then the people have to accept them so that we don't fall into sectarian civil war. And it's the art of the deal is doing that. And at the same time, the president is getting tremendous pressure from the Hill, from Bibi Netanyahu and everybody else. You see, the talks aren't working. Let's go blow up everything. And that is absolutely not what the president's preferences are. I think he's got a very good chance of his strategy working out here. But I want you to look at the downsides for the Knesset and Bibi Netanyahu's party. When these wars stop, when the proxies have no more life support system, and the Board of Peace is sitting there to administer what's left of Gaza and how to fix it, you're going to have an Israeli prime minister who has to go back to a place called October 7th and has to answer for everything that happened then and the corruption charges that have been lobbed at him. That's why the president says at every presser he gets, hey, everybody ought to pardon Bibi Netanyahu, because that's been a fly in the ointment as in terms of getting to where he needs to be. And so very, very tricky to get this offloaded, because it is not in Netanyahu's best interest to have peace anywhere near him right now, because he's got to keep this music playing.
Let me just add one other factor, which is that Trump really does want to have this Abraham Accord. And the Arab and Muslim regimes in the region don't want to have another war. They did help out in June, but they've made it very clear, Mohammed bin Salman and others, the Egyptians, Erdogan, they don't want another war. And I think this is something that Netanyahu is underestimating. And there may be something the U.S. could do to ease Netanyahu into retirement. Maybe to convince him there's a better place for him than a prison in Israel.
Perhaps he could.
Maybe some more Epstein crews would help this.
well, perhaps, Blaine, but maybe Netanyahu could move in with Zelensky in one of Zelensky's villas in Miami or somewhere.
Or Monaco.
Or Monaco.
Alex Craner is always looking for new guys in the neighborhood to pal around with.
I was thinking of war criminals together versus, and I don't include Alex Craner.
Oh, you're being so negative. You're just being so negative.
But the point about the Epstein files, it has further weakened the image of Israel in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And Israel, I think this last couple of years has seen a real weakening in the support for Israel among the American people and, in fact, the rest of the world. What is it? Japan is saying that Israeli citizens aren't welcome to visit its country anymore.
That's right.
Well, I hesitate to bring up Shimon Peres in this, because I think...
Are you going to bring him up twice now, aren't you?
Well, I'm going to. I hesitate, but I'm not afraid to. Because he did some things that were quite useful. He was the one who engaged in a discussion with Lyndon LaRouche in the 1980s of the ODYSEE plan, a joint Palestinian-Israeli water project that would have been the basis for the Oslo agreement.
Right.
But he never followed it through when he was prime minister. And if you go back and look at his history, he also was in charge of defense procurement. He organized the British, French, Israeli collaboration around the Suez Crisis. So he's
Mhm.
sort of a mixed character. His son is a Silicon Valley guy. Kemi Perez is actually one of the heads of the largest venture capital firm in Israel. And so when you bring up the Epstein question, I don't know anything in particular about this man, but that may be where the coconut is buried.
Yeah. Yep. That gets to it. And back, and I hesitate to bring up Shimon Peres. Of course
No,
I
you
do.
don't.
Who
You're
doesn't
you're
hesitate?
liars when it comes to Shimon Peres.
But he's also the one who, through those actions, basically gave birth to the Silicon Valley Israeli relationship, going down to Sunnyvale, California as well,
Yeah.
where a lot of today's defense technologies have been incubated and made. And so you take a look at things like Iron Dome, David Sling, those types of that is all out of that work that goes to California. But a lot of those things benefit guys like Larry Ellison at Oracle and Sam Altman with OpenAI right now. Well, what's happened? You've got Larry Ellison now who's on the receiving end of buying TikTok. And then you get Bibi Netanyahu a week after that, who then says publicly, okay, we own TikTok. Wait a second, whoa, I thought that Larry Ellison bought it. No. He said, we own TikTok. And we can get every single American heart and mind. All of the youth will be with us because we have TikTok. He said that openly.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be able to capture every American heart and mind. And I say that because of the exposure that the genocide in Gaza has got, but also now Jeffrey Epstein's close ties with Mossad and Ehud Barak and how he was
The kids are waking up.
Yeah,
they are waking up.
There's no tolerance for child abuse apart from child abusers themselves.
Very good point, Rich, because if you then look at the role of Maxwell in this, it's not a coincidence that Ghislaine Maxwell ends up with Epstein. And her two twin sisters, older sisters, are very important figures in the British IT sector. So you've got all these networks. Someone just got to pull the picture together. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do part 3 of my Epstein series.
Sounds like you're doing it.
Indeed. Okay. And then with regards to the Epstein thing in Mossad, I do think MI6 are behind that curtain as well. It's just a hunch.
At the top. You got to separate the holding company from the subsidiaries. That's the best business advice I could give you. And I think that Epstein worked for corporate.
Yep. He was not powerful enough as an individual figure to do all these things, but the money behind him and the protection behind him leads you to who he was working for.
That's right.
Yep. And he was he was in the Caribbean where there are all these offshore havens for the City of London.
That's right.
Which is has a lot of expertise in setting up shell companies and trust funds to hide nefarious activities away.
It sure makes that war on the cartels down there in the Caribbean quite a booger, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Okay, now I just want to go back to the nuclear issue and ask you, how do you think China and Russia are going to respond that there's no treaty anymore?
Well, I'll tell you what Lavrov is saying. He's saying that there's going to have to be ongoing discussions. And what the Russians are saying, and I have this from associates who hang out at the United Nations and know some of these diplomats, the Russians are still hesitant to attack Trump, which indicates to me that there have been ongoing discussions continuing. And we know President Trump just talked to Xi Jinping last week. He keeps talking about his great respect and friendship. I don't necessarily agree that there's treaty arrangement that's going to be a division into three empires, because I think the Russians and the Chinese would never do that, at least in those terms. But I think there is a coordination. And that's partly why you're not seeing people like Medvedev jumping off the Kremlin screaming against Trump. The reaction from the Russians has been very mild. The insistence that there has to be a discussion process. But I think there's something more at work to this than we know right now.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's definitely coordination going on. I don't think you could have done the Venezuela operation without that. I think there's definitely, it's not, like I said, it's not chummy, friendly, but, you know, listen, Xi Jinping's got his own political problems at home that are awful. And he's got a four-way factional fight in the CCP, and the people don't like him that much. And so President Trump has a golden opportunity to really lay down the pipe with China. He's not doing it. He's not taking advantage of that opportunity, and I believe it's for a reason. Same thing, you've got China and Russia that they might be moving out some mullahs and their household goods, but they're not taking an interventionist role in Iran, and that implies coordination. And so I think both states, Russia weakened economically for sure out of the war. I think China, which is a political basket case, and we may be seeing the end of the CCP, but they both have momentum, power, and natural resources like no other in the world. And I think that there is a coordination there for stability as these spheres of influence work on what I would view as very dangerous, intractable problems where you've got these reckless Kaya Kallas type kids who in 5 seconds will tell you, yeah, we could win a war with Russia, which is like, I don't think you saw the product brochure of the Oreshnik missile system, Kaya. And I'm not quite convinced you've ever seen what the Poseidon does. Do you know what that does? It's not a cartoon on Disney. So that's reason to be heartened that 3 men right now with the preponderance of power on the planet are using it mostly responsible compared to the city of London, and it's what E.M. Burlingame will tell you is the devil's legions.
Look what's happening in the so-called E3 countries. The political leaders could not win an election if it were held now. Merz is in huge trouble in Germany because the auto sector is collapsing, the infrastructure is collapsing, the schools don't have enough money. You look in France, every time Macron sets up a new government, it's voted down within a few days. There's a farm revolt growing throughout Europe, which is why the Mercosur agreement was shot down. So Europe politically is extremely volatile. And now we see the situation in London, which may be a ray of hope that the people of England can finally get out from under the entrenched oligarchical interests of the city of London.
Right.
If they have the courage for the fight.
We did talk about that in another video, and I do recommend people go and watch that. Blaine, I want to go back to China. Like you said, there's all these problems going on in China. What is happening?
Well, you had a recent purge. There've been, it's purge season for the last 18 months in China. But one of the factions led by the PLA's highest ranking general, Zhang Yuxia, for the last 18 months, he has been on a run after the death of the former Chinese premier Li Keqiang and the arrest of Admiral Miao Hua. These are key figures that were purged, and it's been a back and forth between Xi Jinping's forces. And then where this started was Zhang Yuxia and the military coupled to key elders like Wen Jiabao and Hu Jintao, who used to be the leader of China before Xi Jinping. It's been a fight for power, and it's been to check Xi Jinping's power because they are all, look, we're all corrupt, but you've been misusing your power because you're killing people left and right and you're rolling up a bunch of generals. Well, now it's gone in the other direction. Xi Jinping has now rolled up General Zhang Yuxia. There is no more lead general in the military. That general is General Jiang Shengmin, who is a political officer. He's not a warfighter at all. And what does that all mean? What it means is if you're worried and you're staying up all night, worried that Taiwan's going to fall anytime now, I wouldn't worry so much. I would sleep much better because China's a basket case and does not have a military that can get on anything right now as the CCP tries to figure out who's really in charge. And then Jun Lee, which is another elder, has now come into the fray as the guy who might be wanting to rival and take down Xi. So again, on the world stage, who do we get to see? We get to see their foreign minister, Wang Yi, at all the meetings. And everybody knows who's on the inside that they're in a bad way. And so you can do a couple of things. You could say, this is the time. Let's go run them through. Or you could say, I see we have your attention now. Maybe we should work together. And so everybody's making a big kerfuffle about China this week dumping treasuries all over the place and flushing out our debt. Well, that works in a couple of ways. We are moving away from the US dollar, and we are happy to let dollar reserve currency go into the long night, whether it's good or bad, but that's what they're doing. And China is in such a poor financial condition that it has no choice but to raise financial foreign exchange reserves just to pay the bills. And so, again, we don't like each other. If we loved each other, we wouldn't go seize an illicit Russian tanker hauling Venezuelan oil to China. We wouldn't do that. But in the rubbing of elbows, I think there are limits that the powers have agreed to, because China falling into a civil war and a chaotic mess it sounds really exciting at first until you start reading the book, and then you find out it might not be such a great thing after all. All dynasties end in tears, I can tell you that. And I think we're near the end of the Mao dynasty. And then for the Russians, it's the same thing. Do you really want to see Putin get removed? Because he's the dove in the bunch. Everybody else is a hot mess and ready to really go to war with the world. So China is in a real special place right now. And it's not down and out. You're talking about mass momentum, energy, power, financial potential. But we have a people now whose climate is trashed. Their capital's leaving the country at the speed of heat. And there's protests on the street that are leading to assassinations of local police. And some of the local police aren't even being paid.
Wow. I had no idea any of that was going on. I did know there was a sort of a thwarted coup attempt. But thank you so much for that. And I thank you, Harley and Blaine. I hesitate to mention Shimon Peres, and I'm actually not going to. But
well done. Well played, sir. Well played.
I do want to say this, right? I so enjoy our conversations. I really, really do. I learned so much from both of you. And I'm so grateful to both of you that you come on my channel and we have these conversations. I'm just have no idea how thrilling this is for me. So thank you, Blaine. Thank you, Harley. And thank you, everybody, for watching and commenting and subscribing and liking and sharing and supporting my work and spreading this alternative perspective that is so useful. This is Rich, Blaine, and Harley signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.